Guys, this is Ren.
And this is Rue.
And welcome to Fish Dish. We missed you. How you been? I love your hair. It looks so great like that.
Is that a new brand of makeup you're wearing? You look
I
fierce.
love it. So fierce. On point. I want nails just like yours. So, I guess you're wondering, or not wondering, because you probably see the topic when you click on it, what we're talking about today. Surprise! It is toxic families.
Woo!
I figured being so close to the holidays, it would be a perfect subject to touch on. Because a lot of us are either like me and Rue in recovering from toxic families and the absence of it during the holiday season. But I also know a lot of you have to, anxiously return to your family if you're removed or be back in contact with a family member who is hard to deal with around the holidays. So I felt like this would be a great episode for everybody who knows that struggle because it can feel very isolating.
Mm-hmm.
Seasonal depression creeps in, and then you got that uncle that you're afraid of talking to because he always spits over the table talking about politics.
Gross.
So, first of all, Rue, what do you think is a common example of a toxic family or toxic family member?
I think, oh my gosh.
Do you want to pull from personal experience if it's hard?
I'm trying to think of like a very common one because like a lot of the ones that mom did felt very weird to me.
Yeah.
Like, but I don't know if it's weird.
So,
Um,
uh, one I guess we could talk about is the emotionally dependent mother, the guilt
mhm.
trippy, listen to me, take on my emotional feelings, the type of parent figure or other family member who makes you feel guilty for
Mhm.
not being that emotional wall to lean on for them, and why it's important to draw your boundaries there because that is a toxicity. A lot of people don't realize that when they're in those types of, you know, relationships with their family members. Those are the type of relationships that will mess you up in adulthood and interfere with your own romantic relationships. You either are likely to become dependent, like that member, or the opposite, overcompensating and caregiving in a
Mhm.
healthy way to where you always put your needs in the background. I'm going to start off by saying that anybody who is in any kind of relationship, friendship, family membership, whatever, if you find yourself in conversations that happen a lot to where they're hijacked and focused only on the needs of that person, where you feel like you can't get a word in, where you feel like if you're not constantly there for that person, that you're a bad person, even if it's emotionally affecting your own well-being. I've had friends where their mothers were oversharers from very young ages, almost like this, but not in like an unhealthy, dependent way. She would just like overshare about relationships at too young of ages.
Mhm.
And like, I mean, I've had conversations with mom at like the age 15 where she was like talking about her sex life and a new position she
Yeah.
learned.
Ew.
I still can't look at butterflies the same.
Ew. Honestly, though, to this day, that is why I like think I have commitment issues. Is like being so young and seeing all of mom's like failed relationships and
Yeah.
like being there and seeing her cry about it, being there seeing them argue, and like I think that's the reason why I have a touch of commitment issues.
Yeah. And that is important to bring up, and I'm glad you did, because not just with like the dependent kind of parent, but also if you're in a family where the parents, they either talk badly about one another or fight obsessively in front of you or vent things that are not age appropriate. This is toxicity. Now, a lot of us, of course, families fight, like that's normal, but what is not normal is for parents to air out all their problems. There are non-age appropriate problems in the front of you, or even bring you into the mix to chime in on it. That is not healthy. If you've ever had a
Mhm.
parent say bad things about one parent and expect you to side with them, so unhealthy. Not okay. That is not okay. You should be nurtured in a way to make your own decisions and your own opinions. And you should not feel forced to form an opinion that is based on another family member's opinion. And we see this a lot in like divorced couples. I was just talking about my first divorce. Only divorce. Only divorce ever. I don't know why I said first divorce. I'm not first marriage, but only divorce. My ex tried to get the kids involved and air out dirty laundry, one side bias, not truthful laundry to our 10-year-old, which is very inappropriate. I mean, the first thing you learn when you get divorced is don't do that with kids. It is not okay. So if you have that kind of family member that tries to tell you how to think, no, that's not okay. And there's a blurry line here when it comes to religion. Now, a lot of us are raised to believe in a certain thing, and some of these religions have cultures to where you have to think a certain way or you're shunned.
Mhm.
These are also that it's kind of like a toxic family, especially if there's times where you don't agree. Like, for example, if you're in a church that doesn't agree with the LGBTQ community, but you find yourself questioning your own sexuality and then you feel like isolated, like you can't talk about it. Again, any kind of relationship with anything that doesn't let you, think freely and make your own decisions, it's not good. It's not okay,
Mhm.
for sure.
And a
I
lot of people, like, develop, like, religious trauma from stuff like
Mhm.
that, from being forced into religion at a very young age.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Our mom made a lot of mistakes, but my favorite, most healthy thing I think she ever did is when I came to her asking questions about God because I was hearing about it from school and asking her, where do we come from? What's after this? She took me straight to the library, pulled out a bunch of books of all these religions and told me to figure it out. That she wasn't going to tell me because nobody knows the answer for sure and we can only follow what we feel. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Mhm. Do you remember the time when I was in elementary school and I was talking to, I don't think she was a teacher, I think she was like a TA,
Yeah.
and I was talking to her and it was close to, I believe, Easter. And I was talking to her about Easter and I was telling her how excited I was to see the Easter bunny, to get my basket, to find the hidden eggs, all that stuff. And she looked at me dead in the eye and said, "You can't celebrate Easter because you're not Christian."
What? You're not lying
And
about that.
so I was so upset, and I went home and I told mom, and she was livid.
Mhm.
She was so mad. And so her and, her friend,
Your godmom,
the
perhaps?
yeah, our godmom, went to the school and we had a meeting with the principal, them two, me, and the TA.
Sounds about right.
About how that was inappropriate to say, and oh god. Like, me, I've, been non-confrontational since I was a kid, growing up how we grew up. So,
Yes.
like, I was, like, just sitting there the whole time wanting to disappear, wanting to evaporate, like, "Oh, I shouldn't have even told mom, like, this is so embarrassing, the teacher's gonna hate me now." But,
What
good
was
on
the
mom.
outcome? Yeah, what was the outcome of all that?
She just apologized. She didn't treat she was like I mean, because we were kinda close, like,
Oh,
and she didn't really that kinda bond was gone, but honestly, I wouldn't really wanna bond with someone who tells a kid that anyways.
yeah, that's kind of
So,
like looking in the face of like a Native American child and be like, "You can't celebrate Thanksgiving," you know? What is that?
yeah.
I how you're gonna make me go on a tangent about how Ostara and like what do eggs have to do with the Jesus and what does the bunny have to do with Jesus? Because this is all pulled, all those traditions are pulled from
Mhm.
pagan celebrations. It doesn't make a lot of sense applied. Now, that's my own opinion. And I do have to say, I have a lot of friends who are Christian. I love them. I'm not saying anything about it, but like to tell a child who was raised in a more pagan family that they can't celebrate something that is very closely tied to their own religion. And the only difference is it isn't straight on the equinox, it's just merged with everything else. They merged into our religion so we can merge back. It's
Mhm.
kind of hopefully gained a little
Yeah.
more knowledge about that and doesn't make the same mistakes. I'd like to think she went home and did some research, but I know that's just my positive thinking. It would be
So,
ideal, but
yeah, that is something good that mom always did was let us freely believe whatever religion we want. I don't remember also if you remember, but we were in I don't know how I remember this, but we were in and I don't remember much about it, but we were in this, like, daycare that was at a church, and mom took at least me I don't know if you were going, I don't know if you were too old, I don't know, but, she took me out, and she said it was because they were brainwashing me.
this happened to me too, actually. So I had some friends. I had a bunch of different friends that in different periods of my life would invite me to go to church. And see, mom, even though she had some hangups when it came to the Christian religion, because she was raised Baptist and she carried a lot of her own religious trauma because of that. She never tried to really hold me back from figuring out what I believe, but I was going to like this summer camp. I think you went too. I think we were pulled out for the same reason, but it
Oh,
was
maybe
just
it wasn't a daycare then. That's what I remember, but, like, my memory is, like, fucked,
it
so
was like an after school camp or like a summer campy thing. There was like this church thing that I would go to with one particular friend. I think it was one of my Girl Scout friends. Um, and she ended up pulling me out of that because I would come home saying things that didn't make sense, and I would no longer like talk to reason about it. So,
Mhm.
she pulled me out. A lot of,
Yeah,
guilt-based stuff.
that was probably the same thing, honestly. I
But
don't remember much about it, I just remember she said we got pulled out, and I just assumed it was a daycare because most daycares are at churches.
that's true. That's the truth. The ones we can afford. It's free
Yeah.
stuff at the churches. And
Yeah.
that pulls us back to toxicity again. Anybody who tries to tell you to think differently than you think because of their own reasons, religious or whatnot, it's not healthy. So
Mhm.
thank goodness for her pulling us out. But we'll
And
be
there's a
back.
lot of families like that.
No,
There's a
for
lot
sure.
I mean, like, I this is, like it's kinda weird, but I've been watching a lot of Wife Swap lately,
Mm.
and I am on a specific episode where one family is religious. They're not super religious, but they are religious, they're
Were you
Christian.
on the one where the witch comes in and they switch the moms and like the mom's a witch and she goes into that really Christian family? Or are you talking about the God Warriors?
It's a whole pagan family.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember?
Yeah, that's the
That's
episode I'm on right now. I haven't finished the whole thing, I'm, like,
my
halfway through it.
favorite episode. It is so funny.
It's the mom, like, on the religious side where she
Mhm.
dresses her husband before he gets up for work.
Oh my God.
Like, she clothes him, and she's like and she, like, cuts up his food for him, like, she's like, like he's a kid,
No.
and
No.
she's like she's like, "Many people think it's weird, but this is the reason how I keep my husband. This is why I have a husband." And I'm
No.
like, "Girl," and he just nods his head like, "Yep." And I'm like, "Oh my
Her
god."
son, if they had a son, he would grow up and be
They do have a
very
son.
unhealthy as a partner
They have a
because
son.
Jesus.
And
If
they're very toxic because they force their son like, he's in, like, I think he's in tap class or karate or something like that,
right.
and the dad, like, it shows scenes of him literally sitting there screaming at his son for not getting it right, like, he has to like, they only believe, like, "If you're not first, you're last," type of shit, like,
So
Ricky Bobby type shit.
let me tell you how I think that son would grow up. That son would not be very healthy in relationships and be probably quick to marry somebody. And that person will have to reconcile the fact that their husband is a big baby that can't get his own shit done. And then
Mhm.
he's also probably not going to be able to apologize, and he's probably not going to be able to deal with failure, which might make it hard for him to move up because he's less risk taking. And if he does take risks, it's going to be the only thing he focuses on until he succeeds to prove something to himself. It will be hard for
Yeah.
him to ever be wrong because being wrong growing up to him was bad. He'd be screamed at all the time. So he can't be wrong. So
Mhm.
if he did something wrong and his wife is like, "You hurt my feelings," he'd probably be like, "Well, that's your problem. I'm sorry
Mhm.
you feel that way, but I didn't do nothing wrong." Toxic families, if you do not break the generational BS that, might be going on, you spread it and it gets worse. What I really love right now about society is you see this, especially in millennials and Gen Zs. They're starting to look around and realize that a lot of the crap going on is toxic. And they're trying to make changes and they're making movements. And, they're breaking out of religions. They're being more spiritual, or they go to other religions that are healthier and more accepting. This is what I love. And this is why we made this podcast, right? Because we're waking up. We're realizing what we deserve. And we're struggling, but
Mhm.
we're also kicking ass, and we want to help everybody else do the same.
Mhm.
And it always kind of comes back to succeed. And this is, I'm about to talk about the kind of toxic family where you are targeted a lot, where you feel bullied a lot. Like, I kind of had this experience, and I've been reading stories of people who have similar moms because I'm in several groups that talk about their trauma with their parents, and it makes us all feel better within the community. But I've heard stories where they were afraid to go back to their families for the holidays because they're always ridiculed for everything. They had recently went to Thanksgiving and they hadn't seen their family for a couple of years, and they wanted to come back and catch up with them because they have distance in between their family. Catch up, talk about the successes. So she goes home, and the first thing her mother says to her is, "Why would you wear that?
Ugh.
It's too tight." So she brushes it off, she goes on, and everything she does is a problem. And she automatically felt like the same way she did when she was a kid. And it
Mhm.
was hard for her to bring the growth of herself back to show because she automatically felt so small.
Mhm.
For those people, because I went through this, I was kind of not kind of. It was very much the family punching. Um,
Mhm.
and if I could go back to that girl, and if I could give her any advice about how to survive that, I would tell her this: don't receive it. So we, if we're not in a position to remove ourselves from the toxicity, like sometimes we're dependent, whether we're younger or we're struggling millennials that are struggling to make enough money to pay for rent, and we're back with our parents and we're kind of dependent. If you feel like there's a lot of unfair things coming at you and you can't stop it and you can't remove yourself from the situation, I want to tell you or remind you that we and ourselves have the power to decide what we receive or don't receive. Now, I am not the first person to say this. This is a wide, well-known practice. I can't remember who it originated by, but it was me. Um, but to be hurled like weaponized words, it can hurt us at first, but then we could be like, no, I don't receive that. That's not true. That's not justified. I don't receive it. And by telling your brain that you don't receive it, it doesn't stew on it.
Mhm.
And that's important because even after mom died, within my first marriage, I had very toxic in-laws. They were traumatizing to say the least. Like they were so toxic that I would wake up feeling poisoned and go to sleep feeling poisoned. And when I say feeling poisoned, everything in me hurt. And it was because of this wide panic and everything that was going on. It was hard for me to move, and I took myself to work, but I just felt weighed down and in pain in my muscles and everything. I went to the doctor. I went to several doctors to figure out why I'm in so much pain. Some didn't believe me. Some tried to tell me I had fibromyalgia, but it wasn't until I sought out a therapist who told me, "You are retaining the stress. You have so much cortisol pumping through your veins right now. It is raising your blood pressure. And yes, I believe you when you say you feel poisoned because you are. That cortisol is working you up and it can kill you early if you don't get on top of it."
Jesus.
Yes. Yes, it can cause heart problems. It can damage any of your organs. She told me to put wide distance in between me and them. If I could not do that, remind myself going in and prepare myself to have things said to me that would hurt me and already be in the mindset of I love them, but I don't receive them. I accept their limitations. I don't receive it.
Mhm.
That's the best bit of advice because there's sometimes the first thing I tell people when they vent about their toxic family, the kinds that have their cycles and they never change. A lot of the time, these people in your family, they're not going to listen to reason. They're not going to admit they did anything wrong. So, first thing I would say, if you can remove yourself, do that. I'm not necessarily saying go no contact. Sometimes that's necessary. Very necessary. I'll tell you. So I left for college um, when our mother was recovering from cancer. She was in remission. And during that time when I went to college, um, mostly because of her demanding money from me when I was broke, when I couldn't get my own refund because she did not take care of my documentation and I couldn't go to college with my SS card and I had no birth certificate. I was struggling and she was demanding money from me. This was the woman who did not work and used all my SSI checks from my father passing away to pay the bills, just barely, take us to food banks for food. Then the government, did their thing to where I turned 18 and I was forced to put it in my name, or we were. Mom didn't properly explain that to me. She took me to the bank, told me how to do these things, and kept the card herself. I when I called her out on it, and I even tried to get the government involved, she finally gave me my last check that was under my name of like $600 or something like that. Knowing that I was going to college with basically nothing, I didn't have cleaning supplies, towels, hairbrush, basic necessities. She forced me to pay $200 to her even to bring me to college. So during that time period, starting from that, she demanded more money from me. When I pushed back and brought, some of that stuff up to where I felt like financially abused, she told me, "You know what? I think we're going in separate paths, and I think it's time to say goodbye." Honestly, I was going to say something similar because it did not work for us to be in contact. And that was the healthiest, happiest 3 months of my life. It really was. I felt like I could breathe again. I felt like I could finally feel the air in my lungs. I did not feel like I was being suffocated every minute of every day. I didn't feel the feeling that I would feel when she would call and I would see my name on there, and all of a sudden I felt like I was melting into the floor, like I was so small. It was beautiful. And sometimes there's guilt tied to the happiness, but that's only because we love that person. But we can't love them so much that we don't properly love ourselves.
Um, I have a point to make about okay. It kind of sounds dumb, but like I think wife swap might be like a really good example because there was this other episode I watched where the first mom was like she acted like a dictator. I'm going to be
Mhm.
straight up.
Yeah.
She acted like a dictator. Her
Is this the
kids
same episode? the
No,
religious
this
ones?
is
Okay.
this is a different episode.
So what's the differences in these wives?
So the first mom, she like I said, she was a dictator over her kids. She would scream at them if the house, like if their room wasn't like completely correctly cleaned the way she wanted it to. And the other mom, like she's very like the first mom, she's very big in schooling and like having control over her kids. The other family, like they believed it, well, first they were no school. They didn't go to school. Like the kids did not go to school, which I thought was a little because like
Is it like a
the
homeschool
11-year-old,
situation?
no, they didn't homeschool. Like, they sent letters to the whatever saying that they were homeschooled, but they were not getting any schooling. Like, the
Jesus.
11-year-old didn't know how to read,
Wow.
which is something I didn't agree with the family, but the one thing I did agree with,
That's
to a
neglect.
certain extent, is that there was no hierarchy in the house. Everyone was treated the same. The
Okay.
kids were like basically like the parents were like, if I do this, then you can do this, you know? If
Oh,
I
that's
cuss,
nice.
then you're allowed to cuss. You know, why would I cuss in front of you and then not let you cuss? If I this is kind of like the ground rules were good, but then like how it went out was kind of because like the kids were allowed to stay up 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And you know, like
That's
so
yeah.
like in a whole, as like treating your kids how you want to be treated is good, but like once it branches out like that.
Yeah.
But so the mom, uh the military mom, like, or the free spirited mom, she had the military mom's kids write out what they love about their parents and then things that they could wish they could change. And you know, they said, I just wish I could talk to you guys. I wish you would stop holding things over my head. You
Oh,
know, I wish you would give me affection, because they never gave their kids hugs or anything.
that's not
And
nice. That's not
so then
healthy.
at the round table, when the both the parents, you know, sat down and talked, first of all, they had to do 2 takes because the military mom just kept screaming over everyone.
Wow.
So then they tried again, and the free spirited mom was basically like, listen, this is what your kids said. Like, this is how they feel. Like, take
Yeah.
their feelings into consideration. And the mom was just like, interesting. So then she goes home and she confronts her kid, the oldest, about this. He's about 17.
How does she do it?
And
Is she yelling? Or is she being like, "Bro, I heard you say this thing. Did you say this
well,
thing?"
she was like, she wasn't yelling, no, but she was like, that hurt my feelings. Like, why can't you talk to this, like, about, like, why can't you talk about these things to me? Like, I think it's funny that you think like that, because that's not how it is at all. Like, just disregarding all of his feelings. Like, he was very vulnerable when he said all that stuff. He felt comfortable.
Yeah.
And even the dad kind of saw it. Like, he was kind of like, fuck, like, this is right. And I'm just like sitting there thinking, like, how is that "why does my kid never visit me" going? Like, how's that going for you?
Yeah. Yeah. See,
Like
exactly. A lot of parents don't make themselves a safe place to talk to. If a parent is dealing with chronic, like if the kid is removing themselves a lot, or if they don't talk to that parent like in an intimate way, like telling them like real stuff about their life, their fears, what they're going through, or even like a child who will lie to their parents chronically. This can have to do with them. They're not able to talk openly with their parents. They either think they're going to be ridiculed or yelled at or accused or made to be small in any way. A kid isn't going to feel healthy. And
mhm.
as adults, this is what a lot of people are facing, having to go back to a table with people who you just can't have healthy conversations with.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
if Wife Swap was good at anything, it was good at, like, showing all types of families and all types of struggles, and I liked how it opened eyes to a lot of them. They got to see that there are people that think and act differently, and some of these things are very good, and maybe we should implement these things, and some of these things aren't good, you know? I wanna kinda put a mirror to different parts of
Mhm.
society. I really like that.
And I know, like, a lot of the stuff is fabricated and it's over exaggerated. I've done research since I've been rewatching it.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it is they make the families play into their stereotypes. And
Yeah.
there's some couples that came out and spoke about, like, how the show ruined their marriage and stuff like that.
Oh my
And, like,
goodness.
I yeah, and I get it's reality TV, it's gonna be loosely scripted and
Right.
over exaggerated, but I know that there are families like that actually out there.
Yeah, it opens conversation for a lot of families, you
Mhm.
know? So that was
Yeah.
good.
And it's so it just made me so mad to see, like, you know how at the end they show, like, if things have changed or, like, if things stayed the same?
Yeah.
And with the military mom family, like, she wasn't actually in the military, but, like, she that's how she acted. Like, she woke her kids up at 4 in the morning with a smoke alarm
Yeah.
to, like, to get them up and do their chores 4 in the morning and then get ready for school. And, like, it was kind of funny because she brought to the swap house, she brought a, air horn to wake the
Oh
kids up,
my
and the
gosh.
dad did not like that, and he grabbed it off the table, and while she was yelling at him, he sprays it in her face, like, he's like and
No.
she's like, "How fucking dare" she's going off on him, and
That's
he's like, "Do you
funny.
like that? Did that scare you? Do you like that? Why would you do that to kids then? Why would you do that to kids? If you don't like it, why would you do it to them?" And I'm
That's
like,
a point.
"Oh," she got
That's
so pissed, she
good.
left. She ended the swap early because of that.
That sounds like a very controlling, I run a type ship type of mom. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but
I
at the
have
end, like, it said nothing changed, she stayed the
uh,
same, the rules went back, and I'm just like, my heart breaks for those kids, like, the daughter, she's won awards for her art, and it's all just tucked away under her bed, that's where her mom keeps it,
oh my
and so while the
gosh.
free-spirited mom was there, she hung 2 up around the house, and then when
Oh,
the original mom comes back, she goes, "That's very pretty, it's not staying there," but,
wow.
like, how do you not wanna display your kid's award-winning art?
Yeah,
Like,
that's not good. I'm afraid
my
she's
heart breaks.
gonna yeah, she's gonna grow up trying to always push herself to the next achievement and not feel good when she does that. It's like a bottomless pit for those
Mhm.
kids. I have a semi-unrelated, kind of related tangent while we're talking about reality TV. So our mom is toxic in a lot of ways. A lot of ways with me, it's she would try to convince me I'm a bad person and a bad child. Um,
Mhm.
even though I was like, I would talk smack a lot, like literally I would talk and then my mom would smack me.
Yeah.
Right? I was slapped a lot because I like to say what was on my mind. Um, but I didn't do anything else. I mean, honestly, Rue, you were kind of like the edgier kid in a lot of ways, you know? Um,
Uh-huh.
I was so scared of doing anything wrong because my mom had very severe punishment on me. The worst thing I did was stay up with my light on to read my book way too long. So, my mom, she saw that the next thing coming on TV was like one of those bad kids go like a Scared Straight. I think it was literally Scared Straight.
Oh,
And
the Beyond Scared Straight?
yes, and she's like,
Yeah.
"Calm down, sit with me, because 'cause you're gonna see what happens to bad kids." We were watching it together, and I was like, "Oh my god, these people are horrible. I'm just watching this," and then mom turns to me, locks eyes with me, and she goes, "Yeah, you're not that bad. You're not as bad as these kids." Mhm. But, like,
Okay.
that's the kind of toxicity I had to go through is I was very controlled by being, under constant gaslighting. Anytime she would do something bad, she would like turn the situation around or try to recraft my memories, to make her the victim and me the very bad child.
Mhm.
And that was something that was hard for me when I went to college to come back because very much like that young lady I wrote about, as soon as like I made a lot of books in college, I learned a lot about myself. I kind of flourished being away from it all. And when I came back for the holidays, I immediately felt back to my child self, that helpless. Even though I went away and I learned so much and I grew as a person, I felt so much lighter and I felt so much free when I came home, it was just right back to where I was a teenager. Like that growth, that feeling it wasn't done, you know? And I kind of reverted back to my defenses and my habits back then. And this is one thing that with this episode I really wanted to speak to. and give you some tools to kind of avoid that feeling of reverting back. You know, these are our defense mechanisms that we learn growing up to either shut down or comply or whatever it is. When we grow and we become adults and we learn and we change, it could be such a horrible, disarming feeling to automatically feel reverted back to a teenager. So I always think preparing mentally before going in, maybe having a little mirror talk with yourself, look right into your eyes before you have to go into this. Tell yourself, I'm strong, I'm beautiful, I have values that are different. It doesn't make me bad. You're gorgeous, and you might be going into a lion's den, right? Right, boo? And you're doing like the snake, like, I see you kind of thing, right? With your fingers, like, I see you. Listen, you're powerful. You're going to go into the situation, and we're not going to let it make us feel hopeless. We're going to stand on our boundaries. We need to draw boundaries. That's very important. And for people who are dealing with narcissists in their home or people with narcissistic qualities, which we talk more on another episode, these are type of people that you can't speak to with reason, that you could expect them to have whatever habits they have to regain control. You might not be in a safe place to verbalize your boundaries because it might automatically turn into a fight. So these are the kinds of moments where quiet resilience might be best, but always with the mentality that I know what I know, I believe what I believe, and I'm a good person. If you find yourself ranted at sometimes, repeating affirmations like that, well, I'm beautiful, I'm strong, I believe what I believe, I do not receive the negativity. Just be your best friend hyping you up in that moment. Like they say in insult, like, no, baby girl, that ain't true. She's just jelly. She's jelly because you're out and you're doing your thing and you're flourishing. She doesn't have control over it, but that's okay, boo. We don't receive that. That's probably the best thing. I mean, toxic families and how to cope with them. I don't know how to talk about because there's so many different types and some are not safe and some feel unescapable. And in those situations, it's hard to speak on and give advice because it's also different. But if you have the opportunity to get out of there if you're living in it. And if you're separate from it, but it still bothers you every day, maybe your mom calls you up and demands your time for negative reasons and it's pulling you down, maybe no contact or further distance is necessary. But the key here is to be the healthiest person we can be. And when it comes to deciding things like no contact, it comes to this question: what would make me happier and healthier out of the two? If I keep that person in my life or if I don't. That will often lead you to the answer, I think. Ruru, you got any other points or anything to add? Any more toxic kind of, I don't know, shout outs?
Toxic. This is the
Examples?
shout out to all the parents that
This is
no,
a shout out to all you people out there who feel like you can't say what you need to say. But no, go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
I think another big one that we haven't really touched on that I just want to briefly touch on is like, and this is like kind of funny because it comes from Matilda.
Oh. You're not allowed
Um
to read books. If you just heard me snorting into the microphone, you're welcome.
no,
Right.
it's when Danny DeVito, King,
Love that.
says the whole "I'm big, you're small, I'm smart, you're dumb," stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a lot of parents, a lot of toxic parents
Oh, yeah.
demand respect without giving it out. And I'm
Yes.
such a person that I don't think respect is just given. I
Yes.
think respect is earned by a mutual respect. Like,
Yes.
if you don't respect me, I'm not gonna respect you, and that's something I learned at working
Mhm.
at where I used to work because a lot of and, like, it's, like, whatever with customers, but, like, as I, like, got more bitter to the
Yeah.
job, I was kind of like, "Why am I letting this customer scream in my face?" And, obviously, I would never scream in a customer's face because 'cause I'm not the screamy type, but,
Right.
like, I wasn't gonna sit there and, have my happy, "Oh, I'm so sorry" voice when they're literally screaming at me for something that's beyond my control.
Yeah.
Um so that's with like with parents too, like how are you going to disrespect your kids just because you're older than them? And like I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of toxic parents seem to forget that yes, they're kids, but they're also humans and they should be treated as humans, not animals. Like they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I need to train my kid." Like your kid's not a dog. Like
Right. And I feel like for those people who grew up in that atmosphere, I kind of had to learn this. Because I did have a mom that made me feel very small and demanded respect, but there's a lot of things about her that were unrespectable. I've had to learn as a parent because I would see mom come up sometimes in me where I'd be like, no, because I said so. It doesn't matter the reason. I would automatically go defensive and be like, no, I am the parent. But then I realized exactly what you said. Like, these were things that made me feel small, and I'm trying to tell them to respect me. And what is there to respect? It sounds very authoritarian. And like, even going back into fast food, there'd be managers, right? Who would be like, I'm the manager. You have to respect me. But they would come in late or they would talk to you sideways and they weren't physically being the example of what they should be. I think it's exactly it, Ray. Like, I don't feel like we owe anybody respect until we get it back. I'm the type of person, I've grown to be the type of person to where you automatically get respect from me until you show me that you don't deserve it. I don't care what position you're in. I feel like everyone deserves kindness until they're unkind, you know? I was raised to
mhm.
submit a lot, and I grew into a person who refuses to do so to someone who doesn't respect me. Like, I'm never gonna submit to a person, of course, but like, it comes down to, and I kind of hate this phrase, but sometimes it applies, matching energies. Now, I'm not saying to lower yourself to someone's level. Now, this is unrelated to toxic families because I wouldn't recommend matching energies in those situations. But when it comes to like general respect them until they give you a reason not to, and then just mirror their energy back at them. That's not great advice. It's just what I do. Don't follow it. Yeah.
No, that's what I do too. I'm a big like person when it comes to like matching energy and kind of
Mm-mm.
not really mirroring because mirroring can be toxic, but
Oh
like,
yeah. So, and this is why I say we shouldn't match energies in toxic family situations. And I mean, okay, so I don't know if I necessarily agree with this. What I meant to say was you don't owe anybody anything by existing. A lot of us were raised to feel small and to feel like we don't know as much as we know, or we can't make healthy choices, or, whatever that is. But we are as equally rightfully to be here making our own choices just by existing like everybody else. Nobody is above us, nobody is below us. So when it comes to accepting behavior from people, we should keep that in mind. With toxic families, it's tricky. It's very tricky to navigate it. You feel like you're walking around mines, that you can take any wrong step and something blows up in your face, or sometimes, like our girl that I just talked about, the story I read on the internet. She couldn't walk in wearing what she was wearing. She couldn't. I didn't mention this, but like there was something like she went to serve herself food, and her mom was talking about how it was too much food. Even though she lost 80 pounds since she moved out of that house, because she was using eating as a coping mechanism. Now, the next episode, we're going to talk about how to cope. So, this is more like a general discussion and relation, and just talking about what it's like to be in toxic families and the type that there are. And there's so many types. There's so many we didn't talk about.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I just feel like it always comes down to accepting. I feel like our girl from the internet shouldn't have even went to that Thanksgiving. She had to remind herself, though, that it's toxic, and I'm so happy that she was able to decide to go no contact after that because of how they make her feel. That's so hard. It's such a hard decision to make. For a lot of us, it's necessary. And I do want to make one more point, I think. Um, so don't get me wrong. Every family has their problems. And I would never say or try to have anything I say being interpreted as if your family is toxic, just leave. Or if you have these signs, go no contact. There are families that, I mean, we all have flaws, right? So they could have so many positive attributes and some toxicity. Now, with these families that have a lot of positive with their negatives, sometimes you have family members in there that will listen to reason. And if possible, draw your boundaries and still have your relationships with your family. I mean, there's a lot of defensive parents that are great parents, but they can't really talk. Or they say things that hurt you, but they support you and they love you. Accept that people have limitations. And it's kind of like when you go to the doctor and you get a new medication and you don't know if you should take it. They normally say something like, if the goods outweigh the bads, this is the way we should go, because most choices have consequences, whether it's the right one or the wrong one. Um, if you're stuck in between, if you don't know if your family is toxic, maybe try to weigh the pros and cons. Every family has toxic attributes, but that doesn't necessarily make them a toxic family. But you should always feel like you have a safe space to voice things that hurt you. That's number one. Do you
Yeah.
have do you have anything to add, Ruru?
One more thing with what you just said before the last topic about the like with the Thanksgiving thing is I think like like when you get a piercing or like you if you broke a bone or something and then like years later you can't remember the pain it caused, like you can't remember how it felt. That's how
Yeah,
I feel like sometimes toxic families are. Like when you have kind of isolated yourself from them or I wouldn't say fully gone no contact, but just like really took a step back from them.
yeah,
You kind of forget how bad it felt, how bad it was when you were in there. So then you're willing to give them a second chance because you're like, it couldn't have been that bad.
right.
And then you go to Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, and then you are reminded again. And I
Yeah,
feel like maybe that's what happened with that.
they
'Cause a lot of
say,
people have the mindset, like, that's your family, your
yeah,
family, like, you're always supposed to but that's not the thing, like, if I feel like a toxic family is just like any other toxic friend, and people wouldn't tell you, "That's your friend, keep letting them mentally abuse you," you
yeah.
know?
And if you do have like a really toxic family, you gotta remind yourself, because a lot of the time, family is used and weaponized to give you guilt if you do want to step away from it.
Mhm.
We gotta remind ourselves that we can define what our family is. We can say the blood isn't good for me, but I've gotten so many supportive friends. They are my family. If you're able to
Yeah.
find, healthy friends that you can lean on, they're more of your family than the person that tries to, tear you down. Family is supposed to be a foundation to grow on and get better generationally. And if you find yourself being stifled, by old values or abusive rhetoric, maybe then it's your time to define your own version of what a family is. And it always comes back to like loyalty. Again, people you can grow with rather than people who will stifle your growth.
Mhm.
I
Agreed.
There's some pain though can't be forgotten, and this is tied to our trauma. A lot of us, I can only assume, listen to this podcast, with CPTSD diagnoses like me. There's a lot of pain that can't be healed, and if you have a little too much, and it's hard to step away because of guilt, I think reflection and self-love is so necessary, because as long as you surround yourself with people who make you feel small, you can't grow bigger. You're not in an environment to grow. You're not being watered. You're not being nurtured. So, and some of us, I've had periods of time where I didn't have any sort of family I can lean back on. For those people, I want to tell you, you are big enough to be your own family. If you are the only person you can have to hype you up, then do that. Become your own family. And as you grow and heal, your family, whatever it looks like, will find you because you're in a healthy place. And a lot of what we give out is magnetized to us. It comes to us. That's what happened to me. That's how I've been blessed with my dear Chris. I had to do a lot of healing. And then he
Mhm.
found me and we made a beautiful family. One thing I wanted to say in regards to the next episode, a lot of this, was just talking and venting about the types of toxicity. Next episode, we're going to talk about how to cope through it, give you some tools, and also touch on the complications and hardships of being raised in a toxic, place without being taught properly how to communicate and love one another, going into parenthood and trying to break generational curses. I want to touch a lot on that because it's a hard journey, but it's so rewarding to go on. Before we check out, Ruru, you got anything else? You can give us bullet points for days.
No, I think I said all I need to say.
There's a lot we didn't say, covering a lot of different kind of toxic situations. There might be types of toxicities we don't know of because we never see.
Mhm.
But to anyone and everyone who has parents, siblings, uncles, aunts, whoever it is around them that makes them feel small, remember, you're a strong ass bitch. You ain't gonna
Mhm.
take nothing that you don't deserve because you're on the path to growth and healing, and no one is gonna take that away from you.
Yeah.
Um,
And on the other side, if there is any parents listening to this podcast that
mhm.
some of the things that we've talked about reign true to you, maybe just do a little bit of self-reflecting and a little bit of research.
Yeah, if you felt like you slipped your foot in a shoe in any of this, I really would say before you get mad at me or before you get mad at yourself, go on the internet, find some reliable sources, and read on some things. A lot of parents, I mean, I would probably be as bold to say most of toxic parents, they had toxic parents. So they are repeating what they had and they are struggling with their own traumas. Like for example, my mom had a tendency to beat me up pretty bad sometimes. She would justify it by saying, "Well, my mom shot at me with a shotgun." That's great. I mean, that's not great, but it's like it's great that you survived that, and it's so great that you're not shooting at me. But just because you don't have a weapon when you hurt me, rather other than like your fist, a switch, a belt, a vacuum cord, whatever your weapon of choice is at the time that isn't a gun, it doesn't make it justifiable or okay. And
Mhm.
if you are a parent that, felt hit by anything we said, I want to remind you that you might have to go on your own journey to heal. You're not necessarily a bad person. People who have great intentions but got it wrong, you're not a bad person. You just need to go
Mhm.
on this journey with us.
The best thing about habits or traits is that they can always be unlearned.
Yes, and you can reteach yourself good habits. I did it and I feel so much better for it. It is a long journey. It is grueling. It is hard. A lot of us have shame around being wrong, which makes it hard to grow. But we have to be kind to ourselves and allow ourselves to be wrong and allow ourselves to adjust and to grow. Because you can't grow or change by denying things that are wrong. It's okay to be wrong
Mhm.
as long as you grow about it. Don't hold on to it. So,
Mhm.
on that note, we love all you bitches. Thank you for going on this growth journey with us. The next episode, we'll give you some tools and we'll talk about parenting and breaking generational curses. Thank you so much.
Woo!
I love you so much for coming. You always bring so much beauty to the group. Like I said, look at that hair. I'm so jealous. How much is that product you're buying? $30? 50? Probably, right? Because you look good. Anyways, I love you, Bish.
I ain't never gonna stop loving you, bitch.
Bish, I love you so much that I'm singing about